Hello there, dear ones. Thank you for coming to be with me again. Seeing you all puts a massive smile on my face. What have you been up to this week? Anything fun? Leave me a message in the comments. I'd love to catch up with your lives. I have been working with a panth this week. He is an amazingly clever cat. And I have discovered he has a talent for acting on command. He also makes sounds that queerly resemble speech. So I have decided to test the limits of his intelligence. So far, the results are intriguing. I will keep you caught up on Apanth's adventures as they continue. Tonight's episode contains 2 separate tales of terror. Both are based on historical ghost stories from around the United Kingdom, spectral events that multiple witnesses claim are true. So grab your supplies, dim your lights, and settle down for a journey into the shadows of the ancient world. Civil ghosts. We saw 2 armies in the sky above us. Of all nights of the year, on Christmas Eve, I'd been sent back to Edge Hill by King's command. Yet, you can be sure, I did not believe. The tales of phantom warriors and horses, making maneuvers in the winter sky. In October, mortal combatants had clashed on the earth, but I saw no reason why. Dead men, their duty done, would rise from their rest to mark their paces up above the earth. In truth, I went that night in a foul humor, thinking the folly less than I was worth. Yet, shivering and surrounded by others, my streaming eyes, with great amazement, saw the forces of the good king and parliament take up their weapons and resume the war. More than that, in that awesome convocation, I, who in October had fought with them, saw men who'd been my comrades, friends and fellows, but had perished. Sallying forth again, they raised a cry, their sharpened weapons flashing, as intent on the battle as before. Except to those who watched, their eyes seemed empty. Without the spirit they'd once brought to war, now they appeared to make their movements by rote. Every move was marked out, as though rehearsed. The expression on each of their pale faces suggested each man knew himself accursed. Beside me on the ground stood the town vicar. When, at last, the poor specters passed away, I plucked his sleeve, offered a tot of whiskey, and asked if we could do much more than pray for those poor souls we had just witnessed striving. Could they from labor rest if we helped them? Or were they cursed to fight and suffer always? Had love, hope, and heaven abandoned them? The vicar was a good man, but he had not ever encountered spirits upon high. In his experience, only God's angels were permitted to soar through the blue sky. Still, he invited me to the vicarage, and in a library warmed by a fire, we leafed through books on legend and on folklore. At last, we found a section that inspired some hope for those we'd seen locked in strife and pain. It seemed that those who died in war could not rise up to find the grace and peace of heaven if they believed their mortal case forgot. Only if their cast-off bodies were washed, blessed, and buried snugly in the rich brown earth, where they might dream in peace and solitude, awaiting the great day of Christ's rebirth, would they rest. The battle had been a fierce one. Many wounded men had from the field strayed. Those on the field of Edge Hill were attended, but other soldiers were left where they lay. As long as they stayed, forgotten, abandoned, not mourned with word or tear or heavy sigh, their lonely souls would naturally seek closure by repeating maneuvers in the sky. On Christmas morning, the vicar called his flock and enjoined them, by love of humankind, hold off a little on their celebrations. Instead, the bodies of soldiers to find. To my surprise, they fell to with great gusto. In the early hours of the holy day, more than 200 lost sons of English soil were gathered up and in their home earth laid. I witnessed it and prayed for those lost children. Although I made my report to the king of the particulars of what took place there, I didn't confess that I was crying. When mud and soil at last covered my brothers, they seemed in that time like children forlorn. It was harder to accept they had perished on that fair day when Jesus Christ was born. And it worked. Once or twice, there was a rumble, a flicker of noise, shouts, and cannon fire. But it was brief, barely lasting a moment, before the sounds and shadows soon expired. Still, local people tell how once, on Edge Hill, a battle was repeated up on high, and peace came only on a Christmas morning, when souls at rest to high heaven did fly. The Black Swan. The old black tomb inside the cemetery has stood in the same place 100 years. 5 generations of chanting school children have made of it the object of their fears. They warbled songs about the cruel vampire that crawled at night from the crypt with no name, in search of blood, but only from the fair ones who lived stainless and pure, free of all blame. Don't pass the tomb without crossing yourself twice. The children sang, never after sunset. Pass it by. Others have and were found dead, drained by something that followed as they home crept. Why is the tomb black? Why does it bear no verse? It seems the person who is buried there was a count by the name of Aldous Swanwick. He'd driven many good men to despair in his tenure as count and local landlord. Indeed, word was he was continuing the cruel tradition of a vicious bloodline who had left many poor tenants weeping. The Swanwick dynasty was vile and bloody. They hunted as they wished, both man and beast, and held foul rituals down in the cellars of the grand structure that they called King Least. Some even say that they worship the Black Fiend, who some even call ruler of the world. Down in the bowels of the blood-soaked building, they brought death to many a boy and girl. Thus, the Swanwicks came to be called the Black Swans. Whenever one of the clan passed away, there was no grief nor mourning in the county. Instead, the hearts of the tenants were gay. When, at last, Aldous Swanwick paled and sickened, no qualified doctor would come to him, nor did anyone waste a moment's concern when he lay abed, scared and suffering. It can be imagined that he died that way, gasping and sightless, reaching out for aid. The vicar found him. The man's hair turned pure white, but he remained to see Aldous was laid beneath the earth. The count had left instructions as to just how his tomb should be engraved. But the vicar, attendant to his duty, wishing that further innocence be saved, and afraid that the count's grave would be despoiled if it was known Aldous Swanwick lay there, the count's initial intention he refused, and ordered that the count's tomb be left bare. So, the count's dark planning, the good man spoiled. What Aldous had sought, nobody could say. But if the good man had hoped to forever consign the last black swan to a long stay, he was denied. As soon as Aldous was laid, rumors raced back and forth across the town. There was seen at dusk, rising from the churchyard, a jet-black figure in a cloak or gown. Soon after, livestock were found, cruelly slaughtered, and drained of blood, abandoned on the ground. Stranger than their deaths was the fact that, though pained, the gentle creatures died without a sound or sign of protest. Sickness found young children, and sorrow swelled when they too passed away. People barred their doors long before the sun set, and only emerged in the light of day. Still, that was not sufficient to protect them, until the vicar, himself a sick man, began to understand what was happening and felt compelled to come up with a plan. He mixed mortar with garlic and with silver, and with a portion of the sacred host, reasoning these items, of great purity, could contain something fouler than a ghost. In the full height of the year's longest bright day, he and some men cemented the lid closed, so that nothing could enter or depart it. However hungrily they were disposed, it seemed to work. Cases of sickness slowed down. Those not dead recovered vigor and health. The villagers rejoiced in their new freedom. And what of Aldous and his wicked wealth? Sadly, though cases declined, they did not stop. If you come here, the villagers still will warn you to steer clear of the blank black tombstone, or you might yet encounter, to your ill, the revenant once titled Aldous Swanwick. The blood in your veins will sing out to him, and should you happen to stay in the village, it may be that you'll spend your night with him. Subscribe to become a delicious darling. So, what did you think of tonight's episode? How do you think it felt for reasonable men and women to stand in a cold field on Christmas Eve and watch an entire battle being fought above their heads? What about the evil Count Swanwick? How would you like to meet him on a dark road at night? Once again, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe or follow buttons and tap the notification bell. After all, if we're going to be terrified, we might as well be terrified together. I confess that tonight's poems have spooked me a bit, so Apantha and I will curl up with the lights on and watch Tom and Jerry cartoons until at least one of us feels better. I have a super scary episode planned for you next week. Scary enough that I may have to dig out my old Scooby-Doo DVDs and prepare my popcorn in advance. Until then, stay happy, be kind to yourselves. Don't feel ashamed to keep a night light on if you need to. And sleep well, my delicious darlings.